listener production.
From the briefing team, this is The Beefing.
Hey, it's Helen Smith here. Welcome to The Beefing. Today's beef is between The Briefing's Antoinette Lattouf versus the ABC. Now, this one's especially close to me because I was and still am Antoinette's producer, and watching the feud play out firsthand was eye-opening. And when I asked Antoinette how it felt, she told me this.
It felt like my heart was being broken by like an ex-boyfriend again and again, or someone I loved really, really deeply and someone I trusted really intimately.
Now it's time to share the story and how this beef broke Antoinette's heart and why it matters. Let's get into it. So Antoinette Lattouf is the host of The Weekend Briefing and started on The Briefing as a host back in 2022. To give you a bit of background on the ABC, it's our national broadcaster and is very powerful, especially when it comes to shaping our news cycle. The Australian government actually funds the ABC, but the government does not direct the ABC on programming matters, and Parliament can't tell the ABC what they can and can't broadcast. One of the key players at the ABC when Antoinette was taken off air was Ita Buttrose, who at the time was the chair of the ABC, but we'll chat about her a little later on. First though, let's break down the timeline of events. In December 2023, Antoinette began presenting on ABC Sydney's morning programs for 1 week as a fill-in host. Now, during that week, Antoinette reposted a Human Rights Watch post to her Instagram story, alleging that Israel was using starvation as a weapon of war on Gaza, accompanied by her caption, HRW reporting starvation as a tool of war. Now, Antoinette just reposted the video. She didn't personally make any of these claims, a claim that now, in 2025, is widely accepted by many governments. But the next thing she knew, she was being fired from her 5-day casual stint at the ABC on Wednesday, the 20th of December, 2023. Now, according to the unlawful termination claim she would later file, Antoinette said she was notified of her sacking by her line manager, Elizabeth Green, who said the show was being well received by the listeners and that the order had come from above her. Side note, hours earlier in a WhatsApp group called Lawyers for Israel, a letter from Ita Buttrose was shared saying she noted their concerns and that I have forwarded your email onto the ABC's Chief Content Officer who is dealing with this matter. But we'll get into those WhatsApp messages a little later on. So who were the powers from above that sacked her? Well, the decision to fire Antoinette had been made by Chris Oliver Taylor, who at the time was the Chief Content Officer at the ABC. And the move was reinforced by the views of the then Managing Director of the ABC, David Anderson, who said Antoinette had expressed anti-Semitic opinions. Now, Antoinette made the decision to challenge her dismissal as unlawful, taking it to Australia's Fair Work Commission in January 2024, where she claimed she was sacked for reposting the Human Rights Watch post that I mentioned earlier. That same month, we heard from Antoinette's lawyer, Josh Bornstein, who announced that he was representing her, saying it was a privilege and that her case against the ABC had now expanded, claiming she had now been sacked because of her political opinion and her race. Now, remember those WhatsApp messages I mentioned earlier? Well, the messages also revealed some of the group members called Josh, who is Jewish, a traitor, which a group member told the Sydney Morning Herald was a throwaway line in the heat of the moment. So let's unpack the WhatsApp groups. Leaked messages from WhatsApp group called Lawyers for Israel, which had around 156 members, and another group called Jewish Creators and Academics showed how members of the group repeatedly wrote to the ABC demanding Antoinette be let go and threatened legal action if she was not. This was found in court to have been an orchestrated campaign carried out by pro-Israeli lobbyists that directly targeted Ita Buttrose and David Anderson. And the campaign against Antoinette really started to fire up the week that she was on air. Some messages included, "Why is the ABC allowing this woman to host a radio show?" Followed by, "Exactly, this is why we need to stamp it out." Now, during this casual stint, Antoinette was talking about Cats being on the Sydney to Hobart, Christmas pudding, and playing out Michael Bublé tracks. It was the week before Christmas, so you might be wondering why. Well, before Antoinette started this casual shift, she had made a series of social media posts condemning the actions of Israel over its war on Gaza, including accusing Israeli soldiers of using rape as a weapon of war and raised questions over whether protesters in Sydney had in fact chanted "Gas the Jews" after the October 7 Hamas attack. A question New South Wales Police later confirmed was valid. Forensic analysis found that there was no evidence the phrase was chanted in video circulating online from a pro-Palestinian rally at the Sydney Opera House. Witnesses claimed it was, but investigators could not attribute these statements to a specific individual.
The expert has concluded with overwhelming certainty that the phrase chanted during that protest, as recorded on the audio and visual files, was "Where's the Jews?" Not another phrase as otherwise widely reported.
And let's be clear, the phrase "gas the Jews" is absolutely not acceptable and is extremely anti-Semitic, but it was concluded that the video's subtitles posted by the Australian Jewish Association were incorrect and that what was actually being said was "Where's the Jews?" But getting back to the timeline, in January 2024, so the same month Antoinette takes her case to the Fair Work Commission, journalists at the ABC threatened a walkout over details surrounding Antoinette's sacking, with members of the media union calling on David Anderson to urgently meet with staff and address growing concerns about outside interference, culturally unsafe management practices, and to stand up for journalism without fear or favour. In June 2024, we get a ruling that paved the way for Antoinette to pursue an unlawful termination case in the federal court. The Fair Work Commission found she was sacked from her casual presenting role. The ABC claimed her employment was not terminated because she was paid for the full 5 days, but the Commission rejected that view. In a statement, the public broadcaster said it would continue to defend the claims. As for Antoinette, she said she was pleased with the ruling and committed to achieving a just outcome, but was disappointed in ABC's challenge as it was a waste of taxpayers' money. Next, the case was escalated to the federal court, where Antoinette sought a declaration that the ABC breached parts of the Fair Work Act and that she be compensated for losses and be paid penalties. Now fast forward to 2025, where the trial was live streamed and attracted thousands of viewers every day, myself included. During evidence, it was revealed that David Anderson, so that's the former ABC managing director, texted the outgoing chief content officer, Chris Oliver Taylor, saying, "I think we have an Antoinette issue," and her socials are full of anti-Semitic hatred. However, when David Anderson was asked to provide examples while on the stand, he couldn't point to one or remember if it was directly on her feed or posted by other people. Now, after this trial, Antoinette had this to say.
The rot and the systemic racism at the ABC has been aired, but now it's up to all taxpayers to ensure that sunlight doesn't just expose it, but ignites real and lasting change at our national broadcaster.
Now, one of the earlier legal arguments the ABC withdrew was the contentious race argument. The ABC's defence of the case originally argued that she must prove the existence of a Lebanese, Arab or Middle Eastern race, a tactic which angered ABC staff and Australian Middle Eastern communities and multicultural groups. But later, they apologised, saying it should never have been made. But we did get a pretty good meme out of it with raceless cucumbers because obviously we couldn't have Lebanese cucumbers, but moving on. In June 2025, the federal court handed down its verdict. Justice Darryl Rangier concluded that senior ABC managers had panicked after an orchestrated campaign by pro-Israeli lobbyists to have Ms. Lattouf taken off air. In his judgment, Justice Rangier said the decision was made to appease the pro-Israeli lobbyists who would inevitably escalate their complaints about the ABC employing a presenter they perceived to have anti-Semitic and anti-Israel opinions in such a public position. And Justice Rangier found that the ABC had contravened the Fair Work Act by terminating Antoinette's employment for reasons including that she had a political opinion opposing the Israeli military campaign in Gaza and was awarded $70,000 in damages. Now, after the ruling, Antoinette took to the steps of the court.
Today, the court has found that punishing someone for sharing facts about these war crimes is also illegal. I was punished for my political opinion.
I also sat down with Antoinette after her win to talk through what it felt like when she became the top story herself.
If by sharing facts, by having integrity, by speaking truth to power, giving a voice to voiceless, if that is what you want to call activist journalists, cool, bro.
And now, you might be wondering about the cost of all of this. Well, the cost of the case, financial and reputational, for the ABC are likely to last a long time. And it was revealed that the ABC spent more than $2 million in taxpayers' funds defending the case, our taxpayer money. But speaking of cost, that brings us to the final piece of the puzzle. In September 2025, the ABC was ordered to pay Antoinette $150,000 in pecuniary penalties for terminating her employment, in addition to the $70,000 in damages she was previously awarded. Justice Rangier said in his judgment, the court found the broadcaster had abjectly surrendered to pro-Israeli lobbyists and let down the Australian public badly, not mincing his words. And so I asked Antoinette how she felt, and she sent me this voice memo.
It would have been so much easier if, for example, I was suing Sky News or Rupert Murdoch, like a media outlet who I have long held, really critical views of. But it felt like my heart was being broken by like an ex-boyfriend again and again, or someone I loved really, really deeply and someone I trusted really intimately. And while I was always determined to keep going because I knew that I had done nothing wrong and that the ABC needs to be independent and fierce and not bow to lobby pressure, it was just so heartbreaking to keep going. And each time I thought, oh, maybe there's the good guy in there that I adored. Maybe he's going to come surface and say, I'm really sorry I stuffed this up. How can I make it up to you? But it never happened.
And side note, do you remember all of those key players from the ABC that we were talking about before? Well, here's an update on where they all are now. In December 2024, it was announced that former Executive Chief of Nine Entertainment, Hugh Marks, had been appointed Managing Director of the ABC, replacing David Anderson from March 2025. In January 2025, it was revealed that the ABC's former Chief Content Officer, Chris Oliver Taylor, was set to leave the national broadcaster entirely after his role was substantially downgraded by the new chair of the ABC, Kim Williams. And Ida Buttrose finished up as ABC chair back in March 2024 after announcing she was not seeking to run for a second term. But that's it for today's briefing on Antoinette Lattouf versus the ABC. If you liked this episode, we'd love it if you could share it with someone else who might enjoy it as well. It's a really easy way you can support everything we do here at The Briefing. And you can check us out on Instagram or on YouTube at The Briefing Podcast. Until then, I'm Helen Smith. Catch you next time.